A poor girl, a mysterious man with no memory, and the secret behind a billionaire the whole world was searching for. In a small fishing village by the shores of Zimbali, where waves crash and the wind whispers year-round, Amina, a young orphan girl, rescues a man washed up after a violent storm. She had no idea who he was. She only knew he needed to live.
The sun rose slowly over the distant hilltops, pouring a thin golden light like honey across the shores of Zimbali. Gentle waves lapped at the sand, still damp from the storm that had swept through the night before. Amina, a 19-year-old girl, wrapped a worn scarf around her head, slung a hand-woven basket over her hip, and walked the narrow path down to the beach. Each morning, she came here to collect seashells and clean up debris the ocean brought in. She walked barefoot, her calloused feet used to the scorching heat of the white sand. The morning breeze carried the scent of salt and rotting palm leaves from the coconut grove behind her. In her mind were the same daily worries. What might she find today? Would it sell at the village market before noon? Had Grandma taken her medicine yet? But today was different. At the far end of the beach, where jagged rocks jutted out like ancient teeth smoothed by time, Amina suddenly froze. A dark shape lay motionless. She approached cautiously, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from an instinct that something wasn't right. It was a man. He lay on his side, white shirt torn and soaked in sand and mud, face down in the wet earth. One shoulder was smeared with dried blood, likely from an injury. Near his hand was a wristwatch, the expensive kind she'd only seen in crumpled newspapers used to wrap fish. "Oh my God!" she gasped, kneeling beside the stranger. She gently rolled him over. His face was pale, eyes closed, but his chest was rising and falling. He was still alive. Without hesitation, Amina pulled off her scarf, soaked it in seawater, and wiped his face. She tapped his cheek lightly. "Mister? Can you hear me?" she asked, her voice trembling. No response. Scanning the deserted shore, Amina realized he wouldn't survive long if left there. Whoever he was, she couldn't let him die. So she made the only choice she could. She pulled him up and dragged him back to her hut, nestled behind a patch of trees, just outside the fishing village. The same humble hut where she had lived with her grandmother for years. An hour later, under a palm-thatched roof, the man lay on a bamboo mat, wrapped in an old, faded blanket. Amina sat nearby, grinding medicinal leaves, local herbs known to treat wounds. She had no medical training, but her hands moved like those of a seasoned nurse. As she applied the salve, she muttered to herself, "I don't know who you are, or where you came from. But the ocean brought you to me, so I won't let you die on its shore." Her eyes drifted to the watch and a silver necklace she had removed while cleaning his wounds. He must be someone wealthy. But why did he wash up like this? Pirates? A shipwreck? The man groaned softly. His eyelids fluttered open. Dark eyes, lost and confused, stared up at the thatched ceiling. His lips moved. "Where am I?" Amina startled, then offered a gentle smile. "You're awake. This is Zimbali. You're in my hut." He blinked. "Zimbali? Where's that?" "East Coast, near the Kenyan shore. You washed up this morning. I found you on the rocks." He lifted a hand to his forehead, wincing. I don't remember anything. Not even who I am." The poor girl swallowed hard. Something unspoken stirred deep inside her, like the wind curling under the roof. As Amina tucked the blanket gently around the stranger, he asked in a faint whisper, "And you? What's your name?" She looked up, eyes soft as the morning light. "I'm Amina. Just an ordinary person." He smiled weakly for the first time, despite his fatigue. "Then, thank you, Miss Amina, for saving a man who doesn't even know who he is." 3 days had passed since that morning Amina found the unconscious man washed ashore. During that time, he woke briefly a few times, only to fall back into deep sleep. She brewed herbal medicine, changed his bandages, and fed him thin porridge made from the last bits of glutinous rice in her jar. Whispers began to spread around the village. Some said Amina had brought bad luck into her home. Others claimed the man was a runaway criminal, judging by his torn clothes and strange wound. Amina only replied, "Whoever he is, he's still a human being. And a person deserves to be saved. That's all." By the fourth day, the man could finally sit up and eat. When Amina brought him water, he was staring at his palm, his face clouded with confusion. "Do you remember anything yet?" she asked softly, sitting down beside the bamboo mat. He shook his head, eyes lost. "No. I just remember drowning. And then darkness. When I woke up, I saw the thatched roof and heard the waves." Amina thought for a moment, then said, "Well, until you remember, let me give you a name. How about Kito? It means a small gift in Swahili." The stranger smiled faintly. "Kito. I like that. So from now on I'm Kito." In the days that followed, Kito slowly regained his strength. Though his memory was gone, he clearly had knowledge. He repaired a broken oil lamp that had sat unused for years, handled farming tools with unusual skill, and even began teaching the village children how to write the alphabet in English. Something even many adults had never learned. One afternoon, as Amina mended an old woven mat, Kito glanced around and asked, "Amina, why did you help me? Even when you didn't know who I was?" She looked up, sunlight in her eyes. "Because if I were the one lying there, I'd hope someone wouldn't just walk away." He stared at her for a long moment, then whispered, "I don't know what kind of man I was before, but if I can, I'd like to start over, right here." One stormy night, after Amina had just patched a roof leak, she found Kito sitting outside the hut, his head buried in his arms. "Kito? What's wrong?" she asked, worried. I have this feeling someone is looking for me, and that something terrible happened," he said, his voice cracking. She was silent for a moment, then gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Whatever you were before to me, you are someone the heavens sent. Until your memories return, live as someone new. Each day is a blank page." Kito turned to her, eyes misty. From the rain or something deeper, it wasn't clear. He whispered, "Amina, if I ever remember who I really am, I'm afraid I'll lose all this peace we've found." Amina didn't answer. Instead, she quietly handed him a shirt she had recently repaired. On one shoulder, she had clumsily embroidered a small bird with outstretched wings. Meanwhile, in a town several dozen kilometers from Zimbali, a group of foreign men were showing a photograph of a man around, asking questions. One of them studied the photo and muttered, "Mr. Darnell Mwangi, billionaire and chairman of the Mwangi Corporation, disappeared after a yacht explosion offshore. If he's alive, we need to find him before the media does." Days drifted by in the fishing village of Zimbali, like waves gently brushing the shore. The ocean breeze carried a salty tang, yet there was a softness to it, much like the way Kito looked at Amina as she sat by the fire, carefully wrapping maize cakes for her grandmother. Though his memory had yet to return, Kito blended into the humble rhythm of village life as if he had always belonged. He woke early each day, helped Amina fetch water from the communal well, patched the leaking thatch roof, and even built a simple bookshelf out of scrap wood, where he used Amina's old schoolbooks to teach the children how to read. One afternoon, under a blazing golden sky, the two worked side by side mending a fishing net. Kito was threading tough forest fiber through a torn section. "Have you done this before?" Amina asked, curious. Kito paused. "I'm not sure, but it feels familiar. Like I used to live among people, not just behind cold, silent walls." Amina stopped pulling on the rope, looking up at him. "Do you mean, you used to live a wealthy life?" Kito went quiet for a moment before replying softly, "I don't know. But sometimes, I dream of bright lights, black cars, and meetings in glass towers. Then suddenly, a loud explosion." Amina gently squeezed his hand. It doesn't matter. You're here now, among people who see you as part of their lives. That evening, the villagers gathered to celebrate the full moon. A simple ritual with music, dancing, and stories by the fire. Quito was invited to share a tale. He hesitated, but Amina nudged his arm with a smile. Just tell something from the heart, even if you don't remember the beginning. Quito stood slowly, facing the flickering flames. I once didn't know who I was. But here, I've learned something. You don't need a past to live with kindness. Anyone can start over, if someone reaches out, not for gain, but out of pure goodness. The firelight danced on his face, no longer pale and distant, but firm and warm. From a distance, Amina watched, her heart still as the tide. Something inside her shifted, unspoken, but undeniable. After the ceremony, the two walked side by side down the old stone path. The moon had risen high, silvering the tips of Amina's hair. Amina! Quito stopped, gently touching her shoulder. If I never remember who I was, would that be okay with you? She turned to him, her eyes like a moonlit lake. I don't care who you used to be. I only know who you are now. Quito. The man who brought laughter back to my grandmother, light to the children, and warmth to me. He stood still. Then, almost instinctively, he reached out and took her hand. No thank yous, no awkwardness. Just fingers intertwining, quietly, beneath the distant sound of waves and the scent of sea salt in the air. But peace never lasts forever. In a luxury hotel in the city, 3 men in black suits stared intensely at a surveillance screen. On it was the image of a sun-darkened man, wearing coarse village clothes, sitting under a palm tree, teaching children how to read. One of the men narrowed his eyes. That's him. Mr. Darnell. Living in that god-forsaken village. The afternoon rain came suddenly, as if the sky itself could no longer hold back what was about to unfold. Amina was herding the chickens into their coop when an unfamiliar sound echoed from beyond the village. The heavy crunch of tires rolling over gravel. It didn't sound like any vehicle she'd heard before. She looked up and saw a sleek black SUV rolling into Zimbali, its tinted windows concealing everything inside. Children stared and followed curiously. Amina's grandmother gripped her hand and whispered, Amina, something isn't right. The SUV came to a halt in front of their thatched hut. 3 men in black suits stepped out, their posture stiff, used to giving orders. One of them held a folder, scanning the surroundings before speaking in English laced with Swahili. Has anyone here seen the man in this photo? Amina stepped forward, cautious. The man handed her a photograph. It was Quito. Or rather, a version of Quito in a tailored suit, standing at a podium, the Mwangi Corporation logo behind him. Her heart stopped. Who is he? She asked. Darnell Mwangi. Billionaire. High-level investor. Went missing 2 weeks ago after a yacht explosion. We're his private recovery team. Amina said nothing, but her hands clenched. Just then, Quito, Darnell, stepped out of the hut. He looked at the men, eyes scanning the stern faces and the photo in their hands. He walked toward them slowly, as though each step was pulling back another curtain of memory. The first man nodded firmly. We've been searching for you for 13 days, Mr. Darnell. The corporation is in chaos. The press is spinning wild theories. You need to return. Immediately. Amina turned to look at Quito. No, Darnell. Now frozen in place. Her eyes burned. So, everything you told me was a lie? Darnell shook his head and stepped closer. No. Amina. I didn't remember. Not until they showed up. I didn't know who I was. Not until now. She stepped back, as if hid in the chest. Her voice cracked. And now you're leaving? Back to fancy cars, back to that world, and leaving this place like it never meant anything. Amina, I can't deny who I am. But I also can't deny what you did for me, how you saved me, and taught me what it means to truly live. She swallowed hard, turning away. If you had no memory, I still had hope. But now that you remember, there's no room in your world for people like me. No. Darnell reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. You're Quito in my heart. But Darnell Mwangi might be a completely different man. That night, the village was silent. The small hut felt hollow, colder than ever. Darnell sat alone on the bamboo mat, staring at the pile of children's books he once used to teach, and the shirt with a small embroidered bird Amina had given him. He placed a hand on his chest. It was full of questions now. The next morning, the black SUV drove off. But there were only 2 men inside. Amina didn't say goodbye. She stayed by the village well, her gaze fixed on the faraway sea. The ocean wasn't stormy that day. Just empty. Like her heart. Meanwhile in the city, the media exploded with headlines, Darnell Mwangi returns. At the press conference, when asked about his disappearance, he simply said, "I was saved by someone unknown. Someone who taught me what I had never understood in my busy life, the value of a selfless soul." Then, without warning, he announced his resignation. Stepping down from his corporation, handing it over to a successor team, and retreating from the business world entirely. Weeks later, on the quiet beaches of Zimbali, a young woman was casting her fishing net alone under the morning sun. Suddenly, soft footsteps approached across the sand. Amina looked up. A man was walking toward her, barefoot, wearing coarse village fabric. No bodyguards. No designer watch. Just the same warm gaze she remembered. Darnell smiled. "I found myself again. But I want to live as Quito. Because this place gives me what the world never could." Amina stood frozen. Then she stepped forward. No words needed. The sea sighed softly. And the wind, once again, rose from the distant horizon. That morning, Zimbali welcomed the sunlight just like any other day. But in Amina's heart, the light hadn't truly returned. Since Darnell, or rather, Quito, left, everything around her seemed to move one beat slower. She still rose early, still cooked for her grandmother, still taught the village children to read. But the joy that once filled those routines had faded into habit. Her grandmother understood. She didn't ask questions. One windy night, she simply placed a hand on Amina's shoulder and softly said, "Don't blame someone for leaving before they understand their own heart. But if they return, let your heart decide." 3 weeks later, on a calm morning like so many others, Amina was carrying a basket down to the beach when the village children suddenly ran toward her, shouting, "A visitor! Someone news in the village." He shook his head and pulled a small wooden box from his cloth bag. Inside was the silver necklace Amina had removed from him when she saved his life. "I kept it as a reminder of who saved me and why I needed to live differently." He looked up, his dark eyes shining with something real. "I gave up my empire. Now I just want to build something here, with you if you'll let me." Amina looked at him for a long moment. "I sewed this the day you left," she said, handing him a shirt without meeting his eyes. "Not because I believed you'd come back, but because I never wanted you to leave as a stranger." Word of Darnell or Quito returning spread quickly through the village. But no one judged him. They no longer saw him as a billionaire, but as the man who had once taught their children, fixed their roofs, and laughed with them when the catch was good. Once, a journalist managed to track him down. But he only said one thing. "The real story isn't about me. It's about the girl who saved me without ever needing to know who I was." Amina and Darnell sat by the beach, the place where they first met. Amina leaned her head against his shoulder. "Aren't you afraid you'll regret it? Giving up everything just to live here?" Darnell smiled gently and held her hand tightly. "If there's one thing I learned after nearly dying, it's this: there's no regret in living true to your heart." The waves rolled in, and the sunset painted the entire sky in shades of rose and gold. 1 year later, inside the house, Amina was tying her hair with a white cloth strip. She wore a long earth-colored dress embroidered with flowers along the hem, a gift from an elderly woman in the village. Her grandmother sat by the window, smiling gently. "The day you were born, the sun shone just like this. Today it shines again. The ancestors must be blessing you."